Long before human civilization built its very first brewery, nature was already running its own silent bars. Every piece of sweet fruit dropping into the warm mud became a miniature chemical factory. Wild airborne yeasts settled on these sugars, converting them into a potent and primitive form of alcohol. This natural process was happening millions of years before our early ancestors even learned to walk upright. When did we first transition from accidental consumers of this rotting fruit to deliberate drinkers? For a long time, scientists assumed that alcohol was a relatively modern human invention. They believed that drinking only began with the rise of agriculture and permanent settlements. But evolutionary biology recently uncovered a far older, much more chaotic origin story. Our relationship with alcohol actually traces back to a massive crisis in the treetops of Africa. About 10 million years ago, the Earth's climate began to cool down and dry out. The lush tropical forests where our primate ancestors lived started shrinking rapidly. Fresh, perfect fruit high up in the trees became an incredibly scarce luxury. Fierce competition forced some ape species to venture down to the forest floor. Down on the ground, the only available food was overripe, fallen fruit. But eating this rotting food came with a highly dangerous hidden catch. Fermenting fruit contains high levels of ethanol, which is highly toxic to most animals. Most early creatures eating it would become severely impaired, sluggish, and disoriented. In a world filled with deadly predators, getting drunk was an immediate death sentence. If you couldn't process the alcohol quickly, you became an incredibly easy meal. Then a miraculous genetic mutation occurred in our common ancestor. A single gene, known as ADH4, underwent a highly critical change. This tiny mutation made the ADH4 enzyme 40 times more efficient at breaking down ethanol. Suddenly, our ancestors could eat fermented fruit without getting dangerously intoxicated. This evolutionary breakthrough is famously known as the drunken monkey hypothesis. Instead of a poison, rotting fruit became an incredibly valuable source of energy. Alcohol smelled incredibly strong, making it very easy to locate from far away. The distinct scent of ethanol served as a natural homing beacon for hungry hominids. They followed the rich aroma straight to a high-calorie feast of fallen treasures. This genetic adaptation helped our ancestors survive severe, dry droughts. But eating slightly fermented fruit is very different from actively brewing your own drink. How did humans take the giant leap from foraging to active production? The transition likely began around the end of the last ice age. As the climate warmed, humans began gathering in much larger semi-permanent groups. They started collect massive quantities of wild grains, berries, and honey. Without proper preservation, these gathered materials frequently got soaked by unexpected rain. Water mixed with wild yeasts and grain sugars, starting an accidental fermentation process. Some brave, thirsty human decided to taste this strange, bubbling concoction. They felt a pleasant warmth and a surprising wave of relaxation wash over them. The incredible discovery spread quickly through the prehistoric community. This marked the birth of deliberate, primitive homebrewing. But what physical evidence do we actually have of this ancient drinking? The answers lay hidden in ancient stone vessels dating back thousands of years. In Jiahu, China, archaeologists uncovered pottery fragments from 9,000 years ago. Chemical analysis of these shards revealed a highly complex fermented cocktail recipe. The ancient recipe combined wild rice, sweet honey, grapes, and hawthorn berries. This hybrid drink was a clever mix of beer, wine, and sweet mead. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, a very different drinking culture was slowly brewing. In the Zagros Mountains of Iran, researchers discovered the oldest known grape wine residues. These yellow jars contained traces of tartaric acid and resin from terebinth trees. The tree resin was used as a natural preservative to keep the wine from turning into vinegar. This proves that ancient humans possessed a highly sophisticated understanding of chemical preservation. But a controversial new theory suggests alcohol did far more than just accompany food. Some anthropologists believe that alcohol was the actual driver of human civilization. This mind-bending idea is formally called the beer before bread hypothesis. For decades, we assumed that humans settled down to farm grain for food. But early wild grains were extremely difficult to harvest and process into bread. The nutritional return of bread simply did not justify the grueling, back-breaking labor. However, those same hard-to-process grains were absolutely perfect for fermenting into thick beer. Brewing was far easier than making bread and required much less mechanical effort. The resulting beer was thick, safe to drink, and packed with valuable B vitamins. It was essentially a highly nutritious liquid bread that could be stored safely. The desire for more alcohol may have driven the entire agricultural revolution. To get more beer, humans had to plant more fields and settle down permanently. But alcohol's primary role was not just dietary, it was deeply social. In small hunter-gatherer bands, trust was very easy to maintain naturally. But as communities grew larger, interacting with total strangers became highly stressful. Suspicion and fear of outsiders threatened to tear these early societies apart. Alcohol acted as the ultimate social lubricant to ease this mounting friction. It lowered social inhibitions and fostered a strong sense of collective bonding. Shared drinking rituals turned complete strangers into cooperative tribe members. Nowhere is this social role clearer than at Göbekli Tepe. This 11,000-year-old temple complex in Turkey predates agriculture entirely. Inside these stone temple ruins, archaeologists found massive stone troughs. These huge troughs could hold up to 40 gallons of liquid. Chemical analysis of the stone surfaces revealed residues of calcium oxalate. Calcium oxalate is a major chemical byproduct of brewing grain-based beer. This suggests that nomadic hunter-gatherers gathered here for massive feast celebrations. They hauled heavy stones and built monumental temples, fueled entirely by ancient beer. But early alcohol was not just a reward for heavy, back-breaking construction labor. It also served a highly critical, life-saving purpose in ancient times. Before modern sanitation existed, natural water sources were incredibly risky. Rivers and wells were frequently contaminated with deadly, unseen waterborne pathogens. Drinking raw, untreated water could easily lead to fatal cholera and dysentery. But the fermentation process naturally creates ethanol, which kills harmful bacteria. This made fermented beverages far safer to consume than ordinary river water. For thousands of years, people drank beer simply to stay safely hydrated. These ancient drinks, however, were much weaker than what we consume today. They were low-alcohol, highly nutritious gruels rather than pure, filtered spirits. Over time, different regions developed their own unique local specialty brews. In South America, early civilizations fermented corn to create a drink called chicha. In Africa, tribes brewed thick beers from wild millet and sorghum grains. And in the cold north, people brewed sweet mead from precious wild honey. Every single culture on Earth found a way to create its own alcohol. This universal urge suggests that our love for alcohol is deeply hardwired. Our modern drinking habits are actually ancient evolutionary adaptations in disguise. We are simply repeating the behaviors of our distant ancestors on the savannah. When you raise a glass today, you are participating in a 10-million-year-old ritual. It is a biological legacy that quite literally shaped the course of human history. Without that single ancient genetic mutation, our modern world might look entirely different. So, the next time you drink, remember to thank the drunken monkeys of the ancient forest.